Okay, honey, I think it's time for me to go. See you next week if the weather cooperates. I love you, I said. It was a truly beautiful day. 24 degrees, sunny, light southerly breeze. I packed our little picnic back into the basket and put it in the trunk of my car along with the folding chair. I felt peaceful, calm, and yes, a little sad. Meeting Kat always made me feel that way. I've been in love with her since we were 12 years old, and I'll probably love her for the rest of my life. Back then, my best friend Robert Bruce and I were playing catch in the front yard when I first saw Kat. She and her family were moving into a house next door that had recently gone up for sale. It was in the middle of summer, before the start of second grade. I was 7 years old. Robert and I tossed the ball to each other and occasionally glanced at the movers and the family moving into the house that had previously belonged to the Miller family. And then I noticed her. She was thin, with long blonde pigtails and lots of freckles. Later I found out that she also had azure eyes. We alternately played and watched until the girl came up to her father and began talking to him, pointing at Robert and me. I saw her father nod, and a second later, she ran out of the house with her own baseball glove and headed towards us. "Can I play too?" she asked, smiling and showing a row of crooked teeth. She introduced herself as Catherine McVeigh, Katie to her friends, but Kat to her boy friends. I saw Robert curl his nose, but I was fascinated. I insisted, and the three of us played. She handled the glove well, and, just as important, she didn't throw like a girl. In my opinion, she became part of our group, expanding our small group of friends to 4 people, including Jimmy Arthur. Although there were plenty of girls in our area for her to play with, Kat spent almost all her time with boys. She was with us when we played baseball, dodgeball, war games, and frisbee. I rarely saw her with the girls, especially when they were playing with dolls or dressing up. Little by little, Kat became my best friend, surpassing Robert. If I could only take one friend with me, I chose Kat. If anyone stayed overnight, it was Kat too. Kat's family was Catholic, but that didn't matter until she was 12 years old and was confirmed. Confirmation is a fairly important event for devout Catholics, and there is usually a big party afterwards. Like most of the girls who were confirmed that day, Kate wore a white dress and white stockings. Very unusually for her, her hair was down. 2 weeks ago, she had her braces removed, and she put on a little makeup. I was stunned. I looked at Kat as if I had never seen her before. She was beautiful. My life will never be the same again. "What are you staring at, Julian? Shut your mouth, otherwise the flies will fly in," she said, seeing me staring at her. "Just try to say anything about this dress, and I'll hit you so hard that you won't be able to see straight for a week." I remember not being able to breathe or think properly throughout the entire party. All the kids were told to be on their best behavior, but I couldn't behave badly if my life depended on it. I was in the state of a vegetable. My heart was beating like crazy. I was sweating. If I were 65 years old, they would probably send me to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack. I waited until the party was almost over before I finally walked up to Kat, took her hand, and led her to a quiet place. "Hey, your hands are really wet," Kat said as we walked. "What did you want to tell me that you couldn't say in front of everyone?" "Why you? You're beautiful, Kat," I stuttered, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm not sure I've ever received such a powerful blow before. She punched me right in the mouth, cut my lower lip, and knocked me down. "You are a fool. Don't ever talk to me again," she shouted at me before walking away. I just lay on the grass on my back, wondering if she really meant me. I don't know how long I lay there, but the next thing I remember was my mother helping me sit up and pressing a napkin to my bleeding lip. "Are you okay, Jewel?" she asked, calling me by a name that only my family members used. "What's happened? Who hit you?" "Kat." "Kat hit me because I said she was beautiful," I muttered through my napkin. "You told her she was beautiful and she hit you?" Mom asked, laughing. I nodded, upset that Mom was laughing at Kat for hitting me. "Oh, son, you made a big mistake by telling Catherine that," she said, slowly helping me stand up. Tomorrow, you'll probably have to apologize. Let's go home. But Mom, why should I apologize? She's beautiful, I whined as we walked towards our house. Weren't you messing with her on the floor yesterday, pretending to be WWF wrestlers or something? And today you tell her that she is beautiful. Does Catherine look like a girl who can be told she's beautiful? Mom asked. It was the first of many times in my life that I couldn't figure out what was going on in a woman's head. Kat's mom greeted me with a knowing smile when I knocked on the door of the McVeigh's house the next day. She's in the living room, Julian. Why don't you go to the kitchen, and I'll send her there so you can talk in private, she said. Kat smiled like a hyena as she walked into the kitchen. I knew that she was very proud of the blow with which she knocked me down. My lip was swollen and purple. I muttered more than I spoke. Sorry, Kat. I shouldn't have said what I said, I muttered. No, I shouldn't have, but I probably shouldn't have hit you like that either, she replied. Mom said you were really cute. When did you learn this? I shrugged. Probably my mother taught me something, but she was clearly wrong. Well, I won't tell anyone that I gave you that fat lip if you don't tell anyone that you called me beautiful, she said. Agreed, I said enthusiastically, holding out my hand for her to shake. But Kat, you were really beautiful. Thank you, I guess, she whispered. I never told Kat she was beautiful again, at least for the next few years, but I also never looked at her the same way. She was never just Kat, one of the guys anymore. Things didn't improve when Kat started developing breasts. Suddenly, I wasn't the only one looking at her differently, and I have to admit, I didn't like it at all. I somehow always thought that Kat was mine, and then suddenly other boys began to come out of the shadows to talk to her and flirt with her. To her credit, she didn't pay too much attention to it, which gave me at least some comfort. She was still mine, a Kat, at least in my mind. Junior high schools are strongholds of teenage hormones, and our school was no different from any other. I know my hormones were often in a state of alarm, but I knew I needed to be careful. There was no way I wanted Kat to hit me again. There were many other attractive girls at my high school, but I really only had eyes for Kat. The problem was that I seemed to be stuck in her friend zone because we had been close for so long. The other guys weren't so worried and often approached her. Each time I died a little inside. Because I watched Kat so closely, I noticed that she wasn't quite like all the other girls. I mean, she wasn't the tomboy she used to be, but she didn't seem to like teenage girls as much as others. Not that I'm complaining. Group dating was common in high school, although some individual dating had begun. Kat usually hung out with me on group dates and never agreed to individual dates, although I know she was asked. For me, there were no girls in Kat's stratosphere, so I didn't ask other girls out. The spring dance has become a big social event of the year for our school. Of course, I asked Kat to come with me, but then I avoided it. She didn't attack me and said yes. Kat was wearing a very beautiful dress that I had never seen before, and I was wearing a Sunday suit. I thought we made a good couple. The parents of both groups tried to take a lot of pictures of us. Before my father took us to school, her father pulled me aside and threatened my life if I dared touch his daughter in a way that my father would not want my little sister to touch. This is after she knocked all the daylight out of you. Got it, Julian? Absolutely, Mr. McVeigh, I croaked. We had a good time at the dance. We danced together a few times and stuck together for most of the event. Several other boys asked her to dance, but she categorically refused them all. I felt like King Kong. In the evening, Dad took us home. As I walked her to the door, my palms were sweaty and my heart was pounding in my chest. This was the moment of truth. I planned to kiss her goodnight, assuming she would say yes to my request. There was no way I was going to kiss Kat. While Dad drove the car back to our house and left us alone on the porch, I croaked a request for a kiss, furtively watching her hands. She thought about it for a few seconds before she nodded quietly. I had seen this kind of thing in movies before, so I walked in, put my arm around her back, and what I thought was a very good kiss, right on her warm, soft lips. She didn't move for the first couple of seconds, and then she kissed me back, putting her hands on my shoulders. I was pretty sure my brain had short-circuited for a while. When I regained my ability to think a few seconds later, I trembled from head to toe as we parted. "Did you feel it?" I asked in a whisper. She looked at me as if I had grown a second head before she completely crushed my soul. "No, I didn't feel anything," she replied. "Should I have felt something?" "Ah, no, no, no. Everything was bound to go wrong. James Bond has never received such a gentle response when kissing a woman." "Well, good night, Kat. I had a good time," I muttered. "Yes, me too," she said before entering her home. Even though Kat and I didn't actually date our freshman year, we hung out a lot as always. After all, she was still my best friend. However, she now spent more time than ever with other girls. I admit I'm a little puzzled because she's never wanted to spend that much time with her peers before. I guess I should have known that sooner or later she would turn into a full-fledged girl. Being an idiot, I never thought about asking Kat to go to the homecoming dance with me. I just assumed she knew we were getting together. Apparently she didn't, because about 3 weeks before returning home, I found out that she had agreed to date handsome young Chris Tambrin for the event. I found out about the date when she told me in passing later that day. But I thought we were going to prom together," I whined. She saw in my face that she surprised and offended me. "I'm really sorry, Julian," she said quietly. "You didn't say anything, so I assumed." "I never thought I needed to say anything. My fault. You know what they say about the word assume," I said. "I hope you have a good time." The walk to school the next morning started out very quietly with Robert, Jimmy, Kat, and I walking the half-mile to school. No one said anything much until Robert asked if he and his girlfriend, Ellie Forrest, could go to the prom with Kat and me. The two of us looked at each other before Kat finally answered. We're not going to meet graduates together. Chris Tambrin asked me to go with him." "And I agreed," Kat said. "Oh," Jimmy said before letting out a soft whistle. Robert patted me on the shoulder, and we continued on our way in silence. For the first time, there was a rift in my relationship with Kat. We spent almost no time together for the next few weeks, as she started spending most of her time with her girlfriends. 2 weeks before returning home, my mother asked if we needed to have my suit dry cleaned. I knew why she was asking. I didn't tell her about Kat and Chris Timbrin. When I did this, she stood there for a couple of seconds with her mouth open. "I'm so sorry, Jewel," she said quietly. "I take it you won't go with anyone." "Yeah," I croaked in response. I tried to pretend it didn't bother me when I saw Chris drive up to Kat's house to pick her up for the dance night, but Mom and Dad weren't having it. Chris was a handsome, beloved blonde boy who was the starting shooting guard on our basketball team. He was 6'2", 185, with blue eyes. All the girls at school the previous 2 weeks had been talking about how lucky Kat was. Jimmy and I spent the entire night at the dance bowling alley. We spent a fortune on 2 kids, bowling 10 games each and sharing pizza in the alley. I was so out of it that Jimmy beat me in total pins for the first time. At least one of us had a good time. Kat and I spent the better part of 2 weeks avoiding each other. I didn't know about her, but I was sad. I didn't know how to get out of the impasse, although I wasn't sure that I should be the one to worry about it. 2 days later, I was sitting in my room, looking at the ceiling when Mom brought Kat in. "Someone needs to talk to you, Jewel, and you need to listen," Mom said. I guess Mom and Kat talked first. Mom had a benevolent smile on her face, and Kat looked like she was ready to cry. I'm so sorry, Julian. I probably shouldn't have met him without consulting you first. I knew you expected us to go to prom together," she said. "Yes, well, about that," I replied. "I had to ask. Mom chewed me very well for this. I'm stupid." Deeth holes were still full of tears. It finally dawned on me that it wasn't just about the date. "Julian, can we have a real talk? I mean, really talk. Like, about life and death, maybe? I really, really need someone to talk to, and I think that person is you. Can you just listen to me without judging or getting angry? I really, really need you right now, Julian." "Okay, Kat, I was always yours," I replied. "You speak, and I will listen. Whatever it is, we can get through it together. She hugged me tightly and started crying. I gave her a few minutes to calm down, then I pulled her away from me and looked into her eyes. Go ahead, talk, I whispered. Remember when we were kissing and you asked if I felt something and I said no, she began. Well, I had questions, and I wondered, was it about you or was it about me? So I decided to date another guy and see if I felt something with him or not. You kissed Chris. I started, but quickly stopped when she looked at me with an angry expression. Again, I didn't feel anything, but he did when he grabbed my chest a few minutes later. I hit him between the legs and he threw up. He kept his distance from me for about an hour before we left early, she explained. I started to speak again, but she stopped me with a cold, icy look. Okay, now comes the hard part, she continued. I've been wondering, and worried, to be honest, about some of the feelings I've developed for a few girls over the last year or so. I thought maybe I liked girls. When I didn't feel anything when I kissed you or Chris, the picture became clearer. And then when I kissed Kendra Rizzi 2 days ago in the library, everything fell into place. Tears flowed down her cheeks, and I sat on my bed, unable to utter a word. Say something, idiot, she shouted at me. I was waiting for you to give me permission to speak, I snapped. She looked at me again, then shrugged. I took this to mean it was my turn to speak. Did you kiss Kendra Rizzi? Wow. I'd like to do that too, I said. Is that all you can say? Seriously? She commented. Wait, I thought you liked me. I like you. You know it. So that kiss with Kendra, was it just a kiss, or are you up to something? I asked. She looked guilty and confused. I really don't know. But that's only half the story, Julian. Do you understand what I mean? Yes, I understand, I said. Looks like you have a lot to think about. But no matter what you decide, I will always be there. I will always be there for you, Kat. Always. She plopped down on the bed next to me and tried to crush my ribs in her embrace. So you won't hate me, she cried on my shoulder. I couldn't hate you if I tried as long as you could put up with me loving you from afar for the rest of your life, I said. She pulled me into a tight hug again. I answered her the same. I was pretty sure I was the first person she told about her decision, although I felt she would eventually tell others. We never discussed this in front of other people. I knew she was afraid of being discovered. I knew she dated a few other girls on secret dates during our high school years, but I was mostly her cover. When there were any big events or parties, I was her gentleman. It was safe, and our friendship remained just as strong, so everything turned out well. It probably didn't hurt that I was a good kisser, as she once admitted to me. In exchange for my covering for her, she was my companion when needed, like when my Aunt Trudy got married for the second time. In fact, most of my family was so used to seeing us together all these years that they automatically assumed we were a couple. Then the day came when she turned my world upside down. A group of 10 people, including 2 real-life couples, went to celebrate Kat's 18th birthday on a Friday evening in July. We went to 2 dance clubs and had a great time. Kat and I pretended to be good friends, maybe almost dating. My arms sometimes wrapped around her waist, light touches, a couple of friendly light kisses on each other's lips. To our surprise, Kat seemed to be getting more excited as the night went on. It was probably a little after midnight when she changed my life. Take me somewhere and make love to me, Julian, she whispered in my ear. We were slow dancing when she made that statement. I froze. That is, I stopped dancing and stopped breathing, standing like a statue. Are you sure, Kat? I asked barely audibly. I mean, I don't want you to feel obligated. She led me off the dance floor by the hand. As she passed our table, she told Becky Hansen that some people at the table would have to find their way back home. Seriously? Becky asked. Kat nodded silently. Both girls exchanged smiles, then Kat led me to the car. I'm confused, Kat, I said as I started the car. I really want it, but only if you want it as much as I do. What's going on, honey? We can't talk about this now, Julian. I have something going on right now, and I don't want to lose this feeling. Do you trust me? She asked. Always. Of course, I replied. I didn't know of any place indoors where we could go, but I knew of one secluded spot on a cul-de-sac on the north side of town. We got there in 20 minutes. Get in the back seat, quickly, she said. We climbed into the back seat, and she immediately pressed herself against me, kissing me passionately. We studied each other's tongues for a few minutes before our faces parted. Take off my clothes. Make me naked, Julian. Then do it, but start slowly. I'm still a virgin, she said. Me too, I said quietly. It was probably too dark for her to see me blush, but I saw her eyes sparkle with lust before surprise appeared on her face. Is it true? I would have thought that such a nice guy like you. I was waiting for the right girl, I interrupted. And it's me, despite what you know, she asked. Well, here you are, I said, smiling brightly, my heart pounding in my chest. Yes, now kiss me and start slow, she said. I don't know how long we made love or how long our pleasures lasted. I know for sure that I came to my senses a few minutes later when we were both lying on the seat, my body half on her body, and we were both breathing heavily. Several minutes passed before either of us spoke. Wow, crap, wow, I muttered. Yes, exactly, she replied. What was that? I asked. Silence reigned for several long minutes, broken only by the sounds of our kisses. What if I was wrong, Julian? What if I don't like girls? How would I have known if I had not tried the unknown path? She said. Anyway, I wanted you to be first. You are my best friend. You have always been my best friend. I can't imagine a time when you won't be my best friend. Thank you, she added, without needing to explain it to me. I smiled back. We went to school in the same state, about an hour away from each other, and once we were out of sight of prying eyes, Kat finally felt free to be herself and openly date other women, she told me. She showed me pictures of several of her friends, and I had to admit that she had excellent taste in women. I joked with her that she should find me a couple of women because she has such good taste. Don't be so pathetic. Find your hot women, Romeo, she said. We talked at least a couple of times a week. Usually these were just friendly conversations. Sometimes we touched on more personal topics. We could both ask each other questions about sex that we couldn't ask anyone else. It was like getting the inside information. We could also be honest with each other. While I understood that college was Kat's first time, where she could really be part of the experience, I didn't want her to go completely crazy and go too far. I didn't want her to turn into a prostitute, even if she played for another team. I loved her too much to see this. Be careful, Kat. Keep your eyes open. I know I'm starting to sound like your parents, but that's because I care, honey, I said in one call. It doesn't matter if you date men or women. A girl who is easy to get is still easy to get. Yes, Mommy, she answered me sarcastically. Kat's parents were stunned when she finally came out during Christmas break of her freshman year of college. She told me that she would tell them about it on the first night of her return. The next day, her mother called me asking if I could come talk to her and her husband. I've known them forever. They were practically my second parents. How could I refuse? Why didn't you tell us, Julian? Was the first question I was asked when I met them. You're almost like a member of the family. How could you not tell us? Asked Mrs. McVeigh. It wasn't my place to tell you, and I love Kat too much to go behind her back, I replied. It was up to her to finally tell you. My task was to support her and stand behind her like a mountain. I always thought you two would get together someday. I always thought there was something between you two, her mother said. We've been best friends forever, but she told me in high school that she didn't think she was that way. I was broken at first, but then I realized that she should be herself. I will love her forever, and she knows it. I think it hurt when she told me we'd never get back together. In that way, but at the same time, it didn't hurt as much as if it was another guy, I said. So this whole date was just a game? Asked her father. You too. I didn't think her parents needed to know everything, so I just told them what they needed to know. I helped her by pretending that we were dating, and she returned the favor when I needed someone to be with me. I love her. Always loved, Always will love. I will always stand by her, no matter what happens, I said. That's all we can ask, Julian. Thank you, her father replied. At university, I sometimes dated different girls. I was not a monk, but I didn't strive to find the one. Sometimes random encounters were enough for me. Kat, on the other hand, dated a lot, she admitted to me. She was apparently making up for lost time. In the fall of my senior year, I went to Kat's apartment for Labor Day weekend. She lived with two other girls in a three-room apartment, and no one objected to me sleeping on the floor in her room. Well, to be precise, no one objected until her roommates met me, after which they both offered to share their beds with me. Kat didn't think it was as funny as they did. I blushed, although I was pretty sure that the taller of her two neighbors, Alicia, was completely serious. Back off, girls. He's my best friend, Kat said. Yes, but you're not going to use it for its intended purpose, another neighbor, Roxy, intervened. On Saturday night, the four of us went to a dance club. I enjoyed dancing with each of the three girls in turn. I was dancing with Alicia when I saw Kat head onto the dance floor with a 6-foot goddess with light red hair, bright green eyes and legs, all the way up to her neck. Damn it. Kat stayed on the dance floor after Alicia, and I returned to our table with Roxy. Roxy sat there with a smile like the Cheshire Cat, watching Kat and the goddess. Just look at this. The most beautiful woman in the entire club approaches Kat and drags her onto the dance floor. I don't even like girls, but I could seriously think about having sex with this woman, Roxy said, her face turning red. Oh yes, this is a real Amazon, Alicia said. I would think about that too. Both girls turned their heads and looked at me. Put me on that list too, I replied. Lauren Sittler looked like the volleyball player she was for 2 years in college before she broke her ankle, ending her career. She and Kat walked back to the table, hugging each other, and I could tell from the misty look in Kat's eyes that she was going to spend the night with her. She introduced Lauren to everyone at the table, then leaned towards me and quietly said what I already understood. Do you mind if I meet you tomorrow morning for breakfast at IHOP at 9? She giggled. Certainly. I'll make sure Alicia and Roxy get home safely, I said. We kissed softly on the lips before she and Lauren left the club. The three of us at the table giggled among ourselves as we watched them leave. Wait, she didn't tell us that you can't sleep in our beds tonight, Alicia said. Do you think it was an omission or... By the way, this night was my first and only experience of a threesome. Alicia had a queen bed, and the three of us didn't finish our evening until 3 in the morning. The girls let me use their shower so I could at least wash off the smell of our night of glorious debauchery and perk myself up a little. I kissed Alicia and Roxy goodbye and was waiting for Kat at IHOP with a cup of coffee by 8:55 am. She walked in promptly at 9, accompanied by Lauren. They smiled and giggled like schoolgirls. I hope you don't mind that I invited Lauren, Kat said shyly. I hope Alicia and Roxy took good care of you last night. The last one sounded more like a statement than a question. Now it was my turn to be embarrassed. Kat and Lauren both got jobs in the same city and moved in together sometime after graduation. I was happy for them and told them so. I visited them several times over the next 10 years, and they visited me about the same number of times. My personal life was not as smooth as Kat's. I had a few girlfriends on and off, but nothing serious until Lily Hanlon came into my life about 5 years after graduating. I was a member of the local IMCA and usually went there 3 times a week to work out at the gym. Sometimes I would go into the gym, pick up the ball, and take a few shots to warm up. The IMCA had 6 courts, and they played on all of them except the one where I threw. A woman, a little younger than me, walked up dribbling a ball and asked if I would mind if she also practiced on my hoop. I nodded yes, and soon she was filling the basket like she was Damian Lillard. When she started hitting 3-pointers, I stopped shooting and started watching. She noticed me watching and started adding comments and sounds like 2, 3, bang, and boom. I smiled, admiring her technique and chutzpah. Do you want to play horse? She asked, grinning. I was a pretty good player in my day, but my best years were behind me. Horse, on the other hand, is a game of accuracy, and I was, after all, considered the king of the ridiculous shots, at least in my mind. I agreed. She was the first to start the game and hit 3 long shots in a row, of which I only repeated 2, and I quickly had my first H. Then she missed her next shot, and it was my turn to shoot first. I went to my right elbow and threw my left hand, which surprised her quite a bit. "It wasn't the main hand, right? You threw with your right hand," she said. "Yes. Come on, try it." I smiled. She missed this throw and the next 2, which I also performed with my left hand. She made a face. "Oh, come on, you little coward. Do something normal," she complained. "Coward? Why, because I can use my left hand and you can't," I grinned. "How about this for normalcy?" I walked to the free throw line and dunked the ball like NBA bomber Rick Barry. She looked stunned. "Seriously?" she said almost regretfully. I nodded silently. She sighed and missed, leaving her just 1 letter away from losing. Her big brown eyes became wet with disappointment. "Yes, I understand. How can you lose to this hack, you're thinking," I said, my smile growing wider by the second. "I'm one of those people. Not great at anything, but I have skills. Weird skills, but skills nonetheless. Average athlete, not great. He's got some brains, some common sense, but not the guy who went to Harvard." "Just throw your last throw and put me out of my misery," she grumbled. "Tell you what, if I win, you will agree to go to dinner with me tomorrow night. Applebee's is nothing special, so you don't even have to consider it a date." "Agree?" I asked. She thought for a second, then became confused. Finally, I realized that I was just joking with her. She smiled and giggled. "I agree," she said, throwing me the ball. I barely glanced at the basket because I knew where I was on the court. Anyone who has played a lot of high school basketball can do this. Then I threw a left-handed 16-foot jump shot. She picked up the ball after it went through the hoop and walked over to where I was still standing with her hand raised. I stepped to the left, and she stood opposite me, made another awkward throw with her left hand and whispered, "So, at Applebee's, superstar. Damn, you're an insufferable moron, you know that." "Actually, yes. I'm Julian Leonard, by the way," I said. "Lily Hanlon. A very sad loser," she said dryly. "Oh, very sad? Well, maybe I can change your mind tomorrow night," I said. I was able to change her mind the next night, and she agreed to a real date the following Friday. It turned out she was 23 years old, a recent college graduate, and working in the human resources department of an auto parts manufacturer. She was smart, educated, and a big flirt, as well as a pretty good athlete. We quickly became a couple, in fact, exclusive in a month. I've never had such a connection with a woman before, other than Kat. The only obvious downside was her tendency to flirt. We discussed this several times, and I told her several times where I thought the boundaries should be set. She insisted that it was just a fun conversation, and I argued that for me it was not fun at all. We had several arguments about this, and she always promised to try harder. Then we would end up in bed for great make-up sex. I knew she was manipulating me through sex, but I really felt like she loved me, and I definitely had a big crush on her. About 6 months after we started dating, I invited Lily along for a long weekend with Kat and Lauren. I explained my relationship with Kat from the very beginning, and also told Kat and Lauren everything about Lily. I thought the weekend went well, and the girls seemed to get along well. In fact, several times when I walked into the room, the conversation between them immediately stopped and the laughter began. I took it as a good sign that the 3 of them had become friends, even if it seemed like they were ganging up on me. Kat was expecting my call when she answered on the Monday evening after our weekend visit. As my trusted friend, she also knew exactly why I was calling. "I really like her, Julian. I think she could be the girl for you. Lauren likes it too, but Lauren noticed something I didn't. Lauren said Lily was acting a little flirty when we were at the dance club the other day. I just thought it was a show of enthusiasm, but Lauren thought it was a little over the top. You know she loves you as much as I do." And she's been keeping an eye on the situation too, Kat said. Thank you for your opinion, dear. These are the things I wanted and needed to hear, I said. 3 months later, I proposed to Lily, and she accepted. The wedding was planned about a year after this day. I met Lily's parents several times before I asked her to marry me. They seemed nice enough people, although I noticed that her father didn't think I was good enough for his daughter. My father told me not to worry about it as it's just a dad thing, and I'll experience it myself someday if I have my own daughter. I tried not to take it personally, but I had a feeling that he didn't respect me because I couldn't use a hammer. I know it sounds crazy, but Lily's father owned a fairly successful construction company, and both of his sons and son-in-law worked for him. I was a mid-level accountant and not good at housekeeping. Forget the fact that all three of them could hardly count to 100 together, but I was the one who wasn't good enough because I couldn't build things. The wedding was going to be a pretty big event in her parents' hometown, 2 hours away from where we lived. Lily was going to have a bachelorette party there 2 weeks before the wedding. The party was hosted by her sister Willie, the chief bridesmaid, and the rest of the bridesmaids. Lily told me there would be 15 women, so they booked 5 rooms at the Hilton, figuring they'd be too drunk to drive home. I told her it was reasonable. Since I was supposed to be alone that night, I decided to treat myself to a bottle of Angel's Envy Rye Truly top-notch whiskey and my 2 favorite movies of all time, Jeremiah Johnson and the original Rollerball. It was a great night. I wasn't too drunk when I went to bed a little after midnight. I woke up with a slight hangover around 6 a.m. and decided that I would take an aspirin and go back to sleep, but then a diabolical thought came into my head. I thought there would probably be quite a few hungover women at the inn among Lily and the others, and it would be fun to see what the demon rum had done last night. I knew they were supposed to meet for breakfast at 9 a.m. I decided to show up too. A quick shower, and I was on my way. I even arrived a little early and stood aside as Willie and 8 other women began to gather for breakfast. Lily was not among them. I assumed she had too much. I waited a few minutes before approaching the chatty, but obviously hungover group. Is Lily too ill to even eat with you this morning? I asked with a wide smile. 9 heads quickly turned in my direction. It turned out that I was the only one smiling. Lord, not this. Which room is she in? I know you had rooms 201 to 205. Damn, what room is she in? I shouted. One of the women started to get up, and so did my blood pressure. Sit, nobody moves, I shouted. The woman sat back down. They started talking incoherently to each other. I went to the elevator and went up to the second floor. It didn't take much hearing to understand what was going on in room 205. I turned around and left the hotel, tears of anger and frustration streaming from my eyes. During the 2-hour drive home, I thought about driving off the road and killing myself. I didn't foresee anything. I didn't know who it was or why. I knew only one thing. There would be no wedding. I guess I was lucky that I found out about this sooner rather than later. When I got home, the first thing I did was call Kat, who was supposed to be my witness, and Lauren, and told them my sad story. Then I called my parents. God bless my mom. She volunteered to call the 28 guests on our side and inform them that the wedding was canceled. Since Kat already knew, all I had to do was call Robert and Jimmy, my best men. Besides feeling sick about what had happened, I was also stunned that I hadn't heard from Lily until mid-afternoon. I decided that since I wasn't the one who cheated, I shouldn't be the one who had to make the first move. A very guilty-looking Lily showed up at my door around noon on Sunday, looking like she was about to cry when I opened the door and let her in. I'm so sorry in a way I'll never be able to put into words, she said, sitting down on my couch. I got carried away with the party and lost my head, she said. You call this losing your head, I said. How many times have you lost your head? She blushed deeply and lowered her eyes, then slowly raised them to me. Only once last night and then this morning, she whispered. Okay, hard question. Why did you lose your head? Was I not enough for you? I asked. Like I said, I just lost my head. I drank too much and lost my head. He was handsome. It was just. You don't have to continue or I'll hit you, I interrupted. I've never hit a woman before, but this will be the first time. Who was this bastard? He, he's just some guy. He didn't mean anything, she said. No, he meant a lot to me. In fact, it meant the end for us, I announced. No, we can't do that. Everything is ready for the wedding. My parents have already paid a small fortune, she said. Not my problem. I wasn't the one who cheated on my fiancé, I protested. Oh, come on. We're not even married yet, she whined. Exactly. And now we won't, I said. You know my dad will kill you, right? She said. Not after he finds out it was you who spread your legs. If anything, I think he should apologize to me, I replied. Ah, she muttered. That's what I thought, I chuckled. I haven't heard anything from Lily's father, so I think she told him the truth about what happened. Kat and Lauren stayed with me the weekend I was getting married. They just showed up unannounced on Friday night right after I got home from work. We've already booked this weekend, and they didn't want you to sit here alone, drowning your sorrows alone. You can drown him with us, but you will pay, said Kat when they appeared on my doorstep. We didn't drink too much that night, but I know they both poured me enough to make me sleep like a log. In fact, I slept so well that I didn't wake up until 9:30 the next morning. Lauren was sitting at the table, drinking a cup of coffee and reading my newspaper, when I staggered into the kitchen in gym shorts and a t-shirt. The bathroom and guest bedroom doors were open, and Kat was neither seen nor heard. Hey, where's our problem this morning? She's not usually a morning person on Saturdays, I said. Lauren nodded in agreement with my remark, but I noticed a sly smile on her lips. She had something to do, Lauren said quietly, avoiding my eyes. Come on, spit it out, long-legged woman. I can see in your eyes that you want to tell me something, I said, preparing myself a toast for coffee. She had to return something to your ex-fiancé, Lauren said, her grin turning into a wide smile. I won't like this, will I asked quietly. You know her as well as I do. What do you think? Lauren noted. I winced. An hour later, when I was already washed and dressed, Kat walked into my apartment looking smug, holding a box of Dunkin' Donuts. I just wanted something special for the morning, she said happily. I gave her an incredulous smile. She shrugged. He knows. He figured it out himself. I honestly didn't say anything, Lauren said with an apologetic smile. Okay, tell me already. I know you're eager, I giggled. I called your ex and told her I needed something back, she began. We met in the park next to the donut shop. When she approached, I opened my arms for a hug. I guess she didn't see my right fist until it met her left eye. She fell like a bag of bricks. I'll be upset if this bruise doesn't last 2 weeks. She walked proudly around the kitchen, raising her fist in the air like a boxing champion. Both Lauren and I laughed out loud. Damn, didn't that stupid chicken remember anything I told her about your character? And your right hand? I was surprised. After that, I didn't date for almost a year. It just didn't matter to me. I think my loneliness was more of a concern to Kat and Lauren than to me. After about 6 months, they tried to introduce me to some of their single girlfriends when I came to visit. They weren't particularly tactful in this regard, but at least the women they selected for me were very attractive. I ended up in bed with one of them a couple of times, but most of the dates were one-offs. I'm just not ready, guys. Leave it, please, I told this couple after one of their dates. But I gotta tell you, you guys find some damn attractive women for me. Lauren's ability to find attractive women ultimately worked against Kat 5 years later. She found herself with a 22-year-old senior art student from a local college and ended her 12-year relationship with Kat. Kat said she found out when she came home from work one evening to find Lauren and her new love sitting on the couch waiting for her. Like this, just like that, she said she asked them. Obviously, Lauren's new lover was an emotional person, and at some point in the conversation she jumped up from the couch and quickly walked over to Kat. Lauren didn't have time to stop her, and 2 strokes later the young woman had a broken nose and a split lip and was lying on the floor. Did you have to hit her, Kat? Lauren screamed. I don't know, but I definitely wanted it, Kat replied. You could have warned her, bitch. Kat laughed through her tears as she told this story to me over the phone. I'm sorry, honey. I thought you two would last until the end, I said. You know, someday in the future, when they finally allow same-sex marriage, they'll find out that the divorce rate in same-sex marriages will be the same as in regular marriages, Kat said. I don't doubt it at all, I agreed. Kat and I spent a lot of time together over the next few months. It's what you do for those you love. I knew she would never reciprocate the feelings I had for her, but in my eyes, she would always be more than just a best friend. Somewhere between family and... We were sitting in a nice restaurant, finishing a pleasant dinner. Without thinking, I reached out and took her left hand, which was lying on the table. I held her hand, then stroked the back of it and put it back. I'm sorry, Julian, that I'm not as good a friend to you as you are to me, she said quietly. I know you want a lot more from me, but you accept the fact that I can't give it. And you never push. You would be the man of my dreams, if I dreamed of men. I blushed and lowered my eyes. It's not entirely selfless, I replied. You know there will always be a part of me that hopes. Ah, damn. Let's get out of here and do something stupid. I think we could both use 2 bad hangovers, she said. Kat, who was already over 30, was still a beautiful woman. It was only a matter of time before she felt the urge to dive back into the dating pool. Although Kat and I were now seeing each other no more than once a month, it seemed to me that she began to look a little unwell, a little more tired, perhaps a few extra wrinkles on her face, and I would swear she had lost 10 kilos, although this was not required. Hey, are you okay? I asked her one Saturday afternoon as the two of us lounged on my couch, watching an NCAA softball game. She looked at me strangely. Well, I've been really tired lately, she admitted. I thought maybe I needed to add more cardio to my workouts. You know, next year I will turn 40 years old. That means you'll be 42, buddy. God, suddenly I felt old. I persuaded her to go to the doctor for an examination. Damn it, she hasn't done this since Lauren left her. The doctor couldn't see her for a month, but I marked the date on my calendar. I called her the next day. She gave me evasive answers. Finally, she told me that more tests were scheduled in 2 weeks. I think I was more worried than she was. Damn, you're like my mom, she joked. Bowel cancer is no joke. Doctors noted that because they caught it quite early, her chances of recovery were good, although they warned it might not be easy. I was lucky that the diagnosis came right after tax season, so with accumulated vacation days and the ability to work remotely, I was able to be with Kat a lot. I took her to many doctor appointments, chemotherapy sessions, and other various procedures. I also hired a professional caregiver who could be there for Kat when I couldn't. Her parents also stayed with her from time to time. She went on sick leave because she had to quit her job. Between that, her parents and we covered all her expenses. The chemotherapy took a toll on Kat: nausea, fatigue, and hair loss. Yes, she had her bad days, both physically and mentally, but the strong girl I grew up with fought hard. I did not expect anything different and did not allow her to give up on such difficult days. We fought sometimes these days because I just wasn't going to let her feel sorry for her. You bastard, it hurts me. Give me a damn break at least sometimes. She once screamed when she wanted to skip a chemotherapy session. You can't wait, little coward, I shouted back. Either get into the damn car yourself, or I'll put you in the trunk and drive you away like a piece of luggage. She staggered out to the car, smoke literally pouring out of her ears. She didn't talk to me the whole way, except once when she whispered, I hate you, you asshole. And I hate you, I replied quietly, trying not to smile. The worst was over a few months later, or so we hoped, and here we were again sitting together on her couch, as had become our habit. Why, Julian? She asked. You know the answer, Kat. I love you. Always loved, always will. There is no need for reciprocity. No pressure, I replied. 6 months later, Kat rang the hospital bell when doctors declared her cancer-free. her parents, and I took her to a great restaurant to celebrate. There were a lot of tears. 2 days later, we were again lying entwined on her couch when she took my head in her hands and turned me so that our noses were almost touching. She gave me a deep, sensual kiss on the lips. I was stunned, to say the least. "Did you feel it?" she asked. I was confused for a moment before I realized what was happening. "Yes, yes, I felt it," I insisted. She pressed her lips to mine again, and this time I was completely involved in the process. We repeated this several times over the next few minutes before she took my shirt off. We started kissing again, and she unbuttoned my jeans and pulled down the zipper. I grabbed both her hands and stopped her. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely sure," I whispered. "I'm more confident than I've ever been in my life," she whispered back. We threw each other's clothes off in a flash, stopping only to kiss between each item we took off. She moaned and panted as I kissed her and ran my hands over her body. I pressed my lips to hers, and we kissed passionately for a few more minutes, ending our lovemaking. I slid onto my side so as not to put all my weight on her. "I love you, Julian. I felt it. I feel it. I may be a little slow on the uptake, but I love you. I love you. I love you. I was a fool. I've wasted so much time. There is no more to lose. Will you marry me, Julian?" I froze as if I had been hit on the head with a hammer. My heart was beating wildly, and my blood froze in my veins, but I needed to make sure that this was not just gratitude for helping during her illness. "Are you sure, honey? I didn't think I had the right equipment for you," I said, trying to control myself. "It's not about the equipment, Julian. It's about the connection between us. Do you know how sexy it is when someone loves you so selflessly?" she asked. "No, I don't know," I started to say, but she interrupted me. "Well, you'll find out, mister. I'll show you this every day from now on, if you let me," she said. "Because you know I could never refuse you," I replied. We had a small wedding with my parents and sister, her parents, and a few close friends. She moved into my apartment and soon found herself a part-time job. She didn't have to work, but she wanted to. I would carry her in my arms back and forth if she asked. In our 40s, neither Kat nor I were the physical specimens we were 20 years ago, but that didn't matter. We could still make the bed shake sometimes, but most of the time we made tender, soulful love. She taught me new things, I taught her new things. In that sense, it was like we were kids again. Lord, how much we laughed and giggled. I had a lot of time to catch up. The truth is that our relationship was more than just physical. She has always been my best friend, and being married hasn't changed that. We still spent most of our time together, finishing each other's sentences and arguing like 5-year-olds about who was the best MLB player, Steve Trout or Shohei Ohtani. Oh yeah, I also didn't give her any more reasons to hit me. I still hadn't forgotten that first and only time many years ago and didn't want to repeat. We returned from a 2-week trip to Australia and New Zealand for our 9th anniversary about 10 days before I heard Kat vomiting in the bathroom again. This started happening about a day after we got back, and I started to worry that she might have picked up some kind of infection in the southern hemisphere. She tried to joke that she got ulcers from spending too much time with me, but I didn't buy it. After 2 weeks, she finally went to the doctor, and after several tests and x-rays, her doctor said that she had a small mass in her stomach. Given her history with colon cancer, the doctor ordered exploratory surgery. They will remove the tumor and do a biopsy. Both she and the doctor didn't seem too worried. I was in a panic. Dr. Magnus Rostovsky looked more like an Olympic weightlifter than a world-renowned oncologist. He was only about 170 centimeters tall, but built like a strongman on steroids. He showed no emotion the few times I took Kat to his appointments, but this time it was different. When he came out to see me in the waiting room after the operation, there were tears in his eyes. It is not good to see a doctor with tears in his eyes. We didn't even do a biopsy. We found cancer everywhere when we opened it. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Leonard," Dr. Rostovsky said. Kat was officially diagnosed with stomach cancer. Dr. Rostovsky gave her 6 to 9 months. Chemotherapy was not an option because the cancer was too advanced, the doctor said. Under normal circumstances, I would have been calm and Kat would have been fiery, but these were not normal circumstances. I was furious. Hell, I was furious. Kat, on the other hand, was surprisingly calm and accepted her fate. "How can you be so calm?" I shouted. "This is unfair." "No, it would be unfair if I didn't finally see what a wonderful person you are and marry you. We've had 9 wonderful years, haven't we?" she answered. "You know, you can be very annoying sometimes," I said. "Isn't it for me to know?" she giggled. "Cancer is a monster that does not respect anything, least of all the life expectancy given by the best oncologists. Kat didn't get 9 months, or even close to 6. 9 weeks have barely passed. The greedy part of me wanted more, much more, but the loving part of me couldn't bear to watch her suffer a day longer. Severe pain began shortly after surgery, and she spent the next few weeks in a painful, drugged, half-asleep state. "Sorry, honey. You've been waiting for me for so long, and now I'm leaving ahead of time," she said through tears on that night, which turned out to be the last. "I need one favor, Kat, just one. Wait for me, and leave a place next to you. Promise me, Kat," I said. "I promise, Julian. Hold me, darling. Hold me, please." She had lost so much weight that she barely took up any room in bed. I walked to the side of the bed where there were no wires and bottles and carefully lay down next to her, wrapping my arms around her. I kissed her softly on the lips and held her until she left. She was 51 years old. There is a small cemetery that is located about 30 minutes from our house, in the countryside. It is located on a small flat area with a beautiful view of the cornfield. A nearby grove of oak trees shades Kat's grave in the early afternoon hours, while the field below is bathed in bright sunlight. Kat and I found this cemetery one sunny Sunday afternoon while driving through the countryside a few years after our wedding. We wandered around a bit, looking at the various graves, some of which dated back to the mid-19th century. We stood in the shade of the trees when she pointed to the sunlit cornfield below. "This is the perfect place, Julian. Someday we will have to rest here," she said. I promised her that this would happen. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.